Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stiltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year or so, I've been featuring each fille du roi, or king's daughter, and getting to know them a little bit better. There are over 700 of them. We're on episode 162. We've come a long way. Got a long way to go. In case some of you are wondering, all of my previous episodes can be found obviously on YouTube, but also identified easy link on my website, Have Roots Will Travel, so you might want to have a look at that. Let's begin, but before we do, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. The next three are ways that you can help the channel grow. Coffee, Etsy, and Patreon are all ways of financially showing your support. I thank those of you who have contributed thus far, and I'm just ever so humbled by your support. So we turn our attention to episode 162, Elisabeth Godillion. She was suggested by a viewer. When I looked in my files, one of my dearest high school friends, who we share a common birthday with, or a couple days apart, that is one of her grandmothers as well. So let's get to know Elisabeth a little bit better. So Elisabeth was born about 1651 in Blois, France. Her parents are Nicolas Godillion and Marie Boulet. The commune of Blois is now found in the region of Centre-Val de Loire and in the county or département of Loire-et-Cher. So you can see it's right in the middle. It's in the middle of the middle. So currently there are about 45,000 inhabitants, so it's not a small village. Here's a very, very brief history of this area. It was originally the capital of the county of Loire, which was created in 832 until it became part of France in 1498, when the Count Louis II of Orleans became King Louis VII of France. I mean, this history is amazing. Blois would be the official residence of the kings of France from the 15th to the 17th century. So when she was born, this is what was going on. So picture of the church where she would have been baptized, and also just kind of picturesque, very medieval town. That would be beautiful to visit, I am certain. After losing both parents, she sailed on the Nouvelle-France in July and arrived in New France in July of 1670, July 30th to be precise. And she actually ended up in Montreal. Let's see where she ends up. So Elisabeth is one of les filles du roi that was housed at the Maison Saint-Gabriel, which, by the way, you can still visit to this day. It is a museum, which is on my list of things to do when I get back to Quebec. Marguerite Bourgeois was the founder of the Congregation de Notre-Dame. She was by far the most influential woman in Quebec, and certainly Montreal's history. She was born in France in 1620 and came to Montreal or New France in 1653 at the invitation of Paul de Chamédy, Sœur de Maisonneuve, because he was desperately trying to save the colony of Ville-Marie, which that it was known at that time. She did establish the Notre-Dame congregation and help organize the first church, which would eventually become the first and would eventually form a school that would eventually become Montreal's very first public school. She continued her work with les filles du roi and created a source of support for them. And when they were at Maison Saint-Gabriel, they would learn about how to cook, how to sew, anything they might not have learned prior to coming to New France. And this particular building was at one point a farm that she had acquired, and she was using it to feed the congregants of Montreal. So just an amazing woman. She would eventually become a saint she was canonized in 1982. She was the first Canadian woman to be so honored. So the groom that she selected, and who selected her, his name, Leonard Ethier. He was born in 1644 in the small commune of Maison. And his parents were Leonard, Ethier, and Marguerite Sabel. The region that Manot can be found in is in the region of Nouvelle-Aquitaine. And inside that region, the département, or county, if you want to Americanize it, Charente. It is absolutely a very, very old commune, a very old place. There are currently 576 as of the last census that individuals living there, which is a very small place. But look at the church. How beautiful. Saint Martial is the name of it. And then we have just kind of like a bistro. I saw that and I thought, well, that's kind of, you're traveling through France and you stop and there could have, could have stood your ancestor. Not particularly at that bistro, but on that corner or that street or that area. And I think that is a remarkable place and a remarkable thing to see. So about a year and a bit after she arrived, September 22nd, 1670, she and Leonard were married in Montreal. So that is a copy of their marriage certificate or marriage record, if you will. So Lachine became the place that they would become the pioneers of. Lachine lies along the north bank of the Rivière des Mille Îles, Thousand Islands, the River of Thousand Islands, at its confluence with the Rivière des Prairies. The name is a reminder of the role that Charles Aubert de la Chesnée played as the founder and seigneur of the original settlement. This settlement dates back to 1672 when the first colonists would arrive. And the history of this particular seigneury is actually very, very connected to the fur trade, and also the fact that they were really kind of almost like a magnet for Indian attacks. And so 3 times they were almost, totally destroyed. They kept going and kept going. And then eventually Lachine would grow rapidly. After really in the 1960s, with the opening of the those of you who know Montreal know the 40 and the 25, making it easy access to and from Montreal. So that became, it really became a bedroom community at that point. But it has been around for hundreds of years, and it is one of the most picturesque and very residential areas of the community of Montreal. Here you can see the church. You can see, I wanted to show you where the confluence of the river was, where Lachine is on the map, kind of an overview, an area view. And this is the 1681 census. We have Leonard. Sabotier, by the way, means he made wooden shoes. And Elisabeth, his wife, who's 10 years younger. They have their children, Jacques, Elisabeth, François, Anne, André, Marguerite. They have 1 gun, and they have 4 goats, and they have 10 alpins. So they have about, 7 to 8 acres of land. Not too shabby. So they would go on to have 10 children together. Their firstborn, Jacques, would die in infancy. Elisabeth would marry Louis Forget and have 13 children, 8 of whom made it to adulthood. François would marry Marguerite Milot and have 4 children, 3 of whom would make it, and then marry Marie-Therese Regat and have 10 children, 5 of whom made it. Anne would marry Pierre Bertrand Lalonde and have 7 children, all of whom made it. André would marry Anne Perron and have 2 children, both of whom made it. He would also have a natural child with a lady named Marie-Marthe Chauvet, and that child would survive. He would ultimately pass away at age 30, but he left his mark. Marguerite would marry Charles Labelle and had 11 children, all of whom made it. René would marry Madeleine Regat and have 8 children, all of whom would make it. Madeleine would die in infancy. Ursule would marry Joseph Brunet, but not have any children. Joseph, their last-born son, would marry Angélique Labelle and have 15 children, 12 of whom made it to adulthood. And of course, the Lachine massacre on November 13, 1689, would take the life of Leonard. It is believed that he would die in this massacre. There is no body. His younger brother Francois, who had come to New France, would also die, as well as his niece and nephews. Francois' wife would survive, however, and remarry. So that part of the family continued. Elisabeth and her children would survive. We do not have a burial record for Elisabeth, but we assume, due to contracts and records, that she would pass away sometime after 1715, and this would have made her almost 70 years old. Remember, in 1689, she still had, several young children living with her, and she would have been just, I can't even imagine what she went through. Those of us in the modern world cannot know the horror that they survived. Certainly losing your husband in such a manner, and leaving you really in a strange new world. They had about 19 years together before he was murdered. But the fact that she had to endure this is part of the immense gratitude we have to these women, particularly those who lost their husbands in such a way. So these are my favorite resources. I always like to recommend La Société des Filles du Roi, the Quebec Genealogical E-Society, Nos Origines, Genealogy Quebec, Migration, and Facebook. All of these are wonderful places for you to go and explore more of Les Filles du Roi specifically, and Quebec genealogy in general as well. And so we end episode 162. Elisabeth deserves all of our admiration and our thanks and our gratitude for what she had to endure, losing her husband, being a pioneer at Lachine, and building a family that survives to this day. It's just a tremendous, tremendous honor to her and a tribute. And so we bless her memory. We thank her for her contribution. And most of all, we are grateful that she came to our shores and sacrificed so much for us. Thank you, Elisabeth. And with that, we end episode 162. I will see you on episode 163. Until then, au revoir.